Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm Matt Rossi. I'm the host. With me this week are my fantastic co-hosts, Joe Perez and Liz Harper. And my God, I was trying to call you something else, and I don't know why. Why was my brain was like trying to call you Laura something. I'm like, Laura? Who's Laura? What is happening to you, brain? We've said Liz's name every week for like several months now. Why can't you remember it?
It's been a really long year, you know?
Already, yes.
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has.
But hi. So yeah, we're here. We're doing a podcast. How y'all doing? I guess I could ask.
I mean, I'm starting to get really excited over potentially the books that are going to be releasing for D&D this year, thanks to a long conversation that Liz and I had before the podcast. So
yeah, that whole thing. I'm sorry I wasn't there for the conversation. I had to do some medical stuff, but yeah, quite frankly, Tavern Watch this year is going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll just jump into some stories, because then we can go on to talk about emails and just digress.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to bring up the thing that Joe you sent in, the thing about the Xbox banned list and Microsoft wanting to find a way to export it.
Yeah,
so, do you mind talking about that?
Not at all. So one of the things, Phil Spencer has been very vocal over the last, I'd say a couple months, more than I think he usually has been, for a couple of reasons. And I can drop the other one in here too, because I think it fits since we're already talking about Xbox. But the idea that Phil Spencer wants to really work into is, if you start banning people, or you don't want to deal with people because you're dealing with somebody who's being absolutely bloody toxic, you ban them, you block them, that he wants to see if there's a way that he can work with not just, the Microsoft ecosystem, which is phenomenal in and of itself already with its reach as far as what it could potentially leverage, but other things like social media platforms and stuff like that, to try to take your block list with you, so that if you block somebody and they happen to use the same username everywhere, or it's from the same source IP, that your block list will follow you. And as somebody who has been prodigiously using his block button a whole lot more in the last 6 months than I ever have, I appreciate the idea of that, because if I get rid of somebody, I don't really want to deal with them in other platforms. So I think it's a really cool idea, and it's the first time I think we've heard of somebody trying to leverage technology in a positive user experience manner in a while. So it's like, yeah, everybody else is talking about NFTs, and Phil Spencer's over here talking about yeah, you shouldn't have to reblock the same person 6 times. Let's see if we can figure that out.
Yeah, the NFT thing is really...
It is. But
as many people have pointed out, but yeah, this is an interesting idea. I think I'm down for it. I mean, I can certainly see ways I would use it.
Yeah. Liz, you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, if you don't like someone, you can continue not liking them on every platform. Technologically, though, this seems pretty difficult to pull off, because it would require multiple companies interacting and working together. It would require accounts linked across different networks.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Well, I mean, technically it's not that hard, but the amount of effort that has gone into just getting cross-platform play between Xbox and PlayStation, these are not people who play well with each other.
Well, that's true.
But I think you think about it in a different manner. Let's say it was, so when you deal with email, and I'm just going to use this as an example because it's something that actually explains this, I think, pretty perfectly. You're familiar with the idea of blacklist, graylist, and whitelist? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So every IP that exists in the world has a reputation level associated with it. Every single one of them. Doesn't matter whether it's your home one, a corporate static IP, they all have a reputation level associated with it. And the more reports that a user or users from a particular IP or IP range has, the worse that reputation goes. Now, with this might get a little too technical, and I apologize, but with IPv4 addressing running out, most companies are starting to work towards longer leases, which means your home internet, you tend to have the same IP address, even if you reboot the modem or the router for long periods of time, because the pools are much more shallow now. They don't have an infinite number like they used to. And as a result of that, that means that if I'm being an absolute shitlord on my IP address and people start reporting me, my IP address can have a terrible reputation. They could leverage something very similar to how they do that with emails and websites now, where if an IP range of a certain user gets a lot of block reports, that it could carry over to a central reputation system that everybody can link to that doesn't have to worry about cross-platform. Microsoft already links into those gray lists. Sony does already. Nintendo does already. All of the major internet providers link into it already. All of the major email platforms link into it already. It could be as simple as just finding a way to leverage that technology to carry your ban list with you of, have you reported this IP address before? If you have, you don't see anything from it. So like they could do it, and I'm not saying that it's going to be super, super easy, but the technology technically already exists.
I mean, couldn't an IP address, like if you ban this IP address, you could, like, it could be the ISP's IP address, and the person on it tomorrow may not be the same person that's on it today.
That argument is definitely valid. However, and I'll use Verizon as an example, just as an ISP company. I have had the same IP address for 10 years. 10 years. So yeah, it's not as easy as like just rebooting your modem and getting a new IP address anymore. It is possible, but it's something that they could work off of. And I'm just using that as an example. They could do the same thing with reputation for other things as well. And yes, as Audie Lucas pointed out in chat, yes, IPv6 is a thing that would change the game on that one, but I think we're a pretty long ways out before widespread adoption of IPv6 for consumer grade stuff. So it's something I could see them trying to do something like that, but who knows?
And now this is a segue that would just kill anyone who tried it, so I'm not doing it. Seasons of Mastery has a hardcore mode. It's called the Soul of Iron buff. And Liz made me write this post, so I'm going to talk about it really fast. No, it was there, and you said someone write it, and I did. I don't mean that you didn't come to my house and with a gun and like write this post.
Write this post.
Yeah. The only time you've ever done that was with the what was it? Oh, I'm trying to remember. It was one of the pets. It was the sloth pet. Do you remember the sloth pet thing? Like where I suddenly for some reason, because I was really tired, you turned into J. Jonah Jameson demanding sloth pictures in the post. I like wrote this thing about Liz banging on a desk. Bring me sloths. But regardless, because I had to read this, they added this in, and not when they did the Seasons of Mastery, they added this in, the thing called the Soul of Iron buff, where you can get this buff from these high elf watchers or whatever that they put into Orgrimmar and Stormwind. And once you get the buff, if you die, you get a different buff called Tarnished Soul. And that's it. That if you get that cleansed, which you can get it cleansed off of you, you can never get the Soul of Iron buff again. You're done. You don't die. That doesn't erase your character, but you can't have the buff again, which means that everyone, if you want people to know that you have never died, if you want to play hardcore mode, you can use this buff to have a kind of hardcore mode where people can form a hardcore raid guild, and if your character doesn't have Soul of Iron on them, you're not in the guild anymore, essentially, or you're not in the raid anymore. And they're doing that to raid Molten Core in the Seasons of Mastery. And they've gotten 4 bosses down, so which means that 4 bosses with no deaths.
That's just so wild.
Yeah, and
I mean, not a single death.
And the thing about it is, like, they've actually lost people because they got killed doing something else. Like they died in a dungeon or whatever, and so they lost like a DPS, and they lost like a tank, and they had to like replace them, obviously. But if no one has died yet in any of their raids, and I'm sorry, I did Molten Core for a long time back in the original World of Warcraft, what we sometimes call vanilla, and we never had a raid without a death. We had raids where the entire raid died multiple times on trash.
There's a reason that there's an Undying achievement in Naxxramas.
Yeah, it was, there's always somebody who does something dumb, So managing Molten Core, even though they've only done 4 bosses, they've done, I think, I can remember. I remember Gehennis. I know they've done Gehennis. I think they've done Magmadar, Lucifron, and I can't remember who the 4th one is. Maybe Gar. Yeah, it's Gar.
So they haven't done Baron yet.
Maybe they have done Geddon, because isn't Geddon before Gehennis?
You can pull either or, because they path in the same
yeah,
room.
that's right. I don't know. They've done Gehennis. I know they've done Gehennis, so I don't think they've done Geddon yet.
Because if they haven't done Geddon yet, if they can do Geddon without dying, I will be officially impressed because of that stupid knockup.
Yeah, that is a real. But doing Gar with no deaths, I mean, depending on like your warlock composition.
Yeah,
my raid had a stupid amount of warlocks, so it was Gar was child's play for us.
We did hunter ping pong to make it back in the day to make it easy. Yeah.
We had I think we had 6 warlocks.
Yeah, we had 8 hunters, so we just played ping pong.
Yeah.
They've done Lucifron, Pinnis, Magmadar, and Gar.
Okay. Yeah. So what I thought, and it's like the idea of being able to do Molten Core and at level 60, and the only gear they have is gear out of Molten Core level rating, and mostly they mostly did trash for months to get the bracers. Not months. No, actually a couple months at this point. It has been a couple months. So they mostly did trash for like the whole time, and they've geared up to the point where they're attempting it for real on some bosses. But yeah, there are some bosses like the knockup that Joe just talked about is not fun. Or being the bomb. Bomb is Gehenna's, right? Or is the bomb on Geddon?
Geddon's the bomb.
Yeah, being the bomb. I mean, not just that it knocks you up, but also because you can very easily blow up the whole raid if it's not handled right. So yeah, like I said, we did it a lot, and yet we still I don't think we ever managed a deathless run in Molten Core. Not once. Always somebody died to something. I think one time one of us fell off and into one of the boss rooms. The one with the big giant. I remember that we were running across and someone fell in and
the bridge, and that lets you down in the room. Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just think this is pretty cool that they're doing this. That they're actually doing it hard mode Molten Core raid. That's pretty amazing to me. I straight up think that's cool. Either of you anything else to say about it before we move on?
I think it's fascinating, honestly, and it's got me interested to see what they do, because
I mean,
yeah, it just shatters my perception of what those raids are a little bit.
I find it hard to believe it's even possible to do these with no deaths at all. That's just so wild. It's so impressive. Yeah. And it has to be done with so much care and a lot of, you have to have perfect knowledge and execution of these fights, and you have to have it the first time.
Mm-hmm. So, and everybody has to be doing it.
Yeah.
You can't have that one guy in the raid who's kind of goofy, but you'll like him, but he's, no, that person can't be there. You all have to actually listen and execute. That is that challenges my ability to believe in things. That's like Miracle on 34th Street level. There is a Santa Claus sort of thing for me. But I'm going to move on to the next thing that we wrote about fairly recently. I think everybody knew this was coming. This isn't a surprise, but in patch 9.2, they're going to nerf the bejeebas out of the Shards of Domination that drop currently in patch 9.1. They drop in the raid, but you can get socketed gear outside of the raid as well, right?
A tiny bit. You can get a socketed piece, one piece for rep and one piece for the world boss out in the maw.
And then you can get stuff out of your weekly disappointment chest.
Okay. Yeah. So they've put those in, and I wrote up a thing basically kind of trying to explain it without going into super high detail, because it is actually very complicated. The Shard of Domination actually reminds me of the Diablo 3 Soul Shards thing that's going on right now, which is itself very much like Diablo 2's Rune Words.
I was just going to say, yeah, it reminds me very much of Diablo 2 Rune Words.
And you have the 3 words for each. You've got a blood, frost, and an unholy set, for lack of a better word, and you have to collect 3 of them to make the set bonus.
And the appropriate gear with the appropriate slot to activate. You have to have, because you have to have a head slot for or it might be shoulder slot, whatever. Each one has a specific gear slot to activate the bonus.
So it's pretty complicated, and I understand why if you were a player and you went through all of that to get it, you'd kind of be annoyed that as soon as you get to the new content, Zereth Mortis and the sepulcher of the first ones, they're turning off the Shards of Domination bonuses. They're just in all of it, not just the bonus, the set bonus, but also anything that the shard itself gives you, because the shards each give you, they can go up to rank 5 and they each have a power.
Don't they only work in the Maw and the Domination right now? That's it?
No, that's the set bonuses.
I thought
everything else works everywhere.
Really?
Everything else,
okay.
The power that you get from having a shard equipped is still there, but your set bonuses only work in the raids. But now none of it's going to work. Absolutely all of it doesn't work in Zereth Mortis. It doesn't work in the Sanctum of Domination, and it doesn't work in any PvP and it doesn't work in any dungeon, which means Mythic, it's not going to work there either. The only place that the Shard of Domination will still work is the Maw, Torghast, and Sanctum of Domination. That's it. And I knew they were going to do something, because it was kind of like they put corruption in the middle of the raid of the expansion instead of putting corruption at the end of the expansion. I knew that when we went to Zereth Mortis that they were going to make it so that when you got an upgrade, you didn't say, oh, but I'll lose my set bonus.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, when we first started talking about the Shards of Domination, that we expected that to sort of happen, right?
Yeah, because they're not going to put something in and then have people telling them, well, now we don't want to upgrade, because they've had that happen how many times?
Every time.
Yeah, so...
You already have that with Shards of Domination gear, because it's like, if you're raiding, you need to fill these slots with shard sockets. Whoa,
yeah,
that was a rough sentence.
Suddenly a tongue twister.
But they're replacing it. They're replacing it with set bonuses again. Like that's another thing. So like you're losing a set bonus. To me, it's less about losing something, and instead it's just the same thing is getting a different name on a new set of gear.
Yeah,
but. The other thing in previous set bonuses, it's like when a new set is released, the old set does not go away. You're just collecting a new set with better stats.
They started doing that, though, a long time ago, when people would do things like I would do. Like I want to say it was, what was the last set bonuses we had that we wouldn't get?
Legion.
Was it Legion? No, it was before that. So like you would keep, as a shaman healer, you would keep 2 pieces to have the set bonus from the previous tier, and then 2 pieces from the current tier to have the set bonus from that to min-max your set bonuses. And then they got rid of it so that you couldn't carry the set bonus forward.
Legion is the one where they made it so that every time you got a new set bonus, the old one became legacy and was inactive. That happened.
I definitely I agree with you. I remember that happening in Legion, but I think it happened before that too, because
Warlords was the last one where you could do it, because I remember doing it. I had the Warlords the last Warlords set bonus, and I kept pieces from the set before it. Actually, I think I was actually using pieces from the end of Mists of Pandaria because of how good that set bonus was. Prot Warrior, the set bonus for Mists of Pandaria was this really awesome thing that made your Ignore Pain basically an invulnerability button.
Mm-hmm.
And like it gave it like a really boosted the damage absorb. So I was keeping pieces for that. And then that's when they nerfed it. I remember that. So it was definitely the end of Warlords, beginning of Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's coming. If we're thinking, wow, I'm going to keep my shards of set throughout Sanctum. I mean, the Sepulchre are the first ones. They're going to have to start them both with an S word. Oh my God. But yeah, you will not be doing so. You'll be switching because it won't work in the new. Trying to think.
I'm kind of okay with
Liz, Yep. The problem with me having messed this up is that both Liz and Joe were then responded, and so now I have to go digging through to find the things they said. Joe, you mentioned the Overwatch 2 set thing, so do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm going to throw 2 things in here because I think it's worth noting. So Blizzard, we already know that Activision Blizzard's been having a set of complicated months for their bad life choices. So one thing that stuck out to me is recently Lego, the conglomerate building block company that has existed for a very long time and is ubiquitous with almost everything that uses building blocks. We all refer to them as Legos, even if they aren't Legos, is halting an Overwatch 2 set that was being scheduled for release soon, while it reevaluates its partnership with Activision Blizzard. And this is in terms of, well, basically in light of everything that's been going on, Lego is noted as trying to be a very family-friendly, very forward progressive company in terms of how it treats its employees and what it puts forward. So that would make sense that they're going to start to reevaluate it. That's a huge blow. Like, what comes next? Like, I was starting to think about it after this. There was a Nerf tie-in too with Hasbro, because Hasbro owns Nerf. And remember all the Overwatch blasters we were getting for a very long time? Like every year we were getting Overwatch blasters year after year after year. There hasn't been any new ones released. Not in a very long time. At least a year. And I'm pretty sure there was more scheduled to be released. So I'm wondering if other companies are starting to walk that back and start to wonder if they want those licenses from Activision Blizzard anymore and if they want to work with them. And to kind of bring it back before I get your guys' takes on it, Phil Spencer has also stated, this is Phil Spencer of Xbox, that they're reevaluating their relationship with Activision Blizzard as well. Because they had stuff planned that they were going to do back on. So that's going to potentially be changing as well. What do you guys think?
The thing about Phil Spencer talking about Activision Blizzard is we've had statements from Xbox, from PlayStation, and from Nintendo saying we are reevaluating our relationship. And, this is very serious. We're reevaluating our relationship. And nothing has happened. Like, these are words, not actions.
Sure.
And, like, over the years, I've seen a lot about how, oh no, outrage, this is terrible, and companies will follow through with a carefully worded PR statement. They're very concerned about this relationship and blah, 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 and not necessarily following through because the interest dies down and they just hang in there and do nothing, and maybe nothing happens. If they genuinely reevaluate these relationships, that's real bad for Activision because, Call of Duty, they're a big console game player, so... But so far, it's just words. There's a lot of people out there saying, oh, we're reevaluating our relationship. And so far, very little action on it. So I'm not taking that to heart yet.
I wonder how much of it has to do with contracts, though, too. Because that's the other side of the coin we don't know a lot about. True. Is what contracts were penned between them that they have to honor to a certain degree. Like, they might not be... And I'm not trying to play one side or the other is right or wrong. I don't know. And I've seen enough contracts in my day to know that sometimes you are locked into a certain term. Otherwise, you need to pay millions and millions of dollars to get out of it. So they might be looking for a way out of that. I don't know. But I think you're right that it's been a lot of words, but I'm hoping we see more action from it. Lego, I think, on the other hand, will probably try to pull it if it doesn't violate a contract, because they've done that in the past with other stuff, other licenses. So I would not be surprised if they do that again.
I wouldn't mess with Lego. They're maniacs. I got that in, 90s reference for you as you remember it. I come back to the thing I always come back to. When you see, like, when this all came out, the board rallied to Bobby Kotick's defense before we even knew all the stuff he'd done, before we even knew that he'd written the letter that everyone thought was Frances Townsend. And this is not me defending Frances Townsend. I think that the fact that they hired Frances Townsend is pretty bad, considering that she's somebody who defended waterboarding.
War crime apologist, yep.
But, I honestly still think, fire Bobby Kotick is the right response here. And for that matter, maybe the entire board should go. They won't, obviously. They do not care about the welfare of their employees. They care about their bottom line. And that's... If companies like Lego actually do start pulling their contracts, if Xbox was like, maybe we don't need Call of Duty, then it would be something. But as long as Call of Duty is on consoles, as long as people are porting, various games to it, there's only so much pressure a sternly disapproving, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed is going to get you. And that's so far that has been the gaming industry. They're kind of like, oh, we're shocked. We're so shocked by this. You're not shocked by it because everybody is doing it. Stop telling me you're shocked. Do something. And I think Liz is right that I don't foresee this unless this kind of stuff piles up and we have a bunch of companies saying, yeah, we don't want that anymore. And now, Activision is actually feeling it. Probably nothing will happen. That's not something I'm happy to say. This is why, again, I think unionization is so important, because you need a counterforce. You need something to actually say, no, you have gone too far. You've fallen too far into the Willy Wonka sphere of things, where you are turning children into giant grapes or whatever. You're going too far, and you don't know that you've gone too far because nothing is too far to you. So there needs to be a counterforce that says, no, that was actually too much, and that's where I am.
I think in general, corporations are not our friends, and I think in the gaming field, we've felt for a long time, corporations are our friends. This company makes all of our favorite games, and the developers are really awesome, and we talk on social media. I love this company. They're my friends. They are not your friends.
No.
In the end, they're in this to make money. The big corporation is in this to make money. They may have some really cool developers. They may have a bunch of hardworking people who love games who you may be friends with, but corporations are not your friends. And that's the same for Xbox. That's the same for PlayStation. That's the same for all of them. So until they do something more than a sternly worded letter, I don't have faith that they're going to do something.
But that's why it's also very important that like places like us and others out there continue to talk about it and keep it present in the media so that it doesn't go away, right? Like, I think you're absolutely right that they wait for it to, that a lot of times they wait for it to die down so that they don't have to deal with it anymore. But if we don't let it die down, then they have to do something or face repercussions of their own as well.
There's a famous Roman general named Scipio Africanus. He got the Africanus sobriquet because he ultimately won the war against Hannibal and defeated Carthage in the final Punic War. I promise there's a reason I'm bringing this up. The reason, you know why he was so famous in Italy at the time, why he became the hero of Rome? Because he adopted a strategy called conctator. Conctator means delay. He didn't fight. He just kept letting Hannibal destroy everything he came across. He kept retreating. And he kept retreating because he knew he had the whole of the empire to retreat into. And he would have supplies the whole time because it was his home ground. And Hannibal, if he wanted to win, would have to follow him and extend his supply line out. In order to, they know that if they can just do nothing long enough, they can tire us out. They can, exhaust us. They can make it so we want to do something else, want to talk about something else, want to think about something else, and then they can go back to business as usual. They can delay. That's one of their biggest union-busting strategies, is simply to just try to run out the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're doing here. It is a playlist. It is a playbook as old as time.
Heck, Starbucks just tried to do that by delaying the vote for unionization here in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Liz is right. Until they actually do something, until there is a cost, then things won't change. Which, wow, that's a depressing note to go into our emails with. Okay, give me a sec here. Okay, trying to force myself into being more reasonable. All right. If you've got a question for us here at Blizzard Watch, you can send it to our email at podcast@blizzardwatch.com, subject line podcast at Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for the show. Please send a few emails that way. They don't all have to be about Lore Watch, guys. Tavern Watch could use a few even. But yeah, email, you can totally use that. Or if you'd rather, we have two Discord channels. One is the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel, from which the vast majority of today's questions came from. And we actually did also get a question from the Q Questions channel. So thank you for that question, by the way. It was really cool that there was one there for us. So either one works. We love getting questions. They don't have to be about Blizzard games. We are branching out. So if you have a question about a different video game, feel free to ask us that. And if we don't know the answer, we can try and find it. I'll be more than happy to go do some Google searching and see if I can answer a question about a game I don't play. But I do play a lot of games, so chances are pretty good I've at least looked at your game.
We play a lot of games.
Yeah, between the three of us, we definitely play a lot of games. And I got to tell you, now is a really good time to ask questions about Mass Effect. I'm just saying, now is the time.
Every time is a good time to ask questions about Mass Effect, but that's just me.
But now's a really good time because I'm currently enmeshed in it. So anyway, this one, I'm going to ask Joe. You read the first one. There, I'll just pick
the one that's for me and Liz. What are the most interesting AV Menta? Wow, I can never.
Avametatarsalia.
Avametatarsalia Archosaurs. Those are the ones that have wing-like digits, right? I have no idea.
No. Avametatarsalia is the dinosaurs, birds, and pterosaurs.
Yeah, I can't answer that question.
See, there was not a name attached to this, so I'm wondering, Matt, did this question come from you? Did someone actually send this in?
Someone did send it in, but they sent it in not to our email. Someone DM'd it to me. So.
Yeah, thank you, whoever sent that in, because
it may have been somebody I'm related to. I'm just saying.
Matt, maybe you could tell us what an Avametatarsalia is.
Okay, Avametatarsalia is, like I said, it's birds, dinosaurs, and pterosaurs. It's they call it the bird. It's another thing is the bird line Archosaurs. It's everything. It's birds and everything that is more closely related to birds than crocodiles. The other Archosaurs, the non-Avametatarsalia, are crocodilians, everything related to crocodilians and everything that's more closely related to crocodilians than to dinosaurs. And there's some back and forth on this, but for instance, there's a I keep wanting to say sauropod. That's not the right word. There's a saurischian named Arenthosaucus. Arenthosaucus, it means red crocodile. Arenthosaucus was not a crocodile, but it was more closely related to them than it was to dinosaurs. And it's kind of infamous in paleontology for having a gigantic head. Like, it's got this enormous, very dinosaur-looking head. When they found it, they were like, what's going on with this thing's head? Its body, the vast majority of these things don't look like crocodiles. In fact, modern crocodiles are kind of a throwback to the earliest, Archosaurs, the aquatic ones, like the phytosaurs. But yeah, the basic difference is it's like everything that isn't a bird or a bird relative, or is a sauropod. It's a non-avametatarsalia. That's just, they came up with the avametatarsalia to come up with a way to basically say dinosaurs and everything related to dinosaurs, but not everything related to dinosaurs. It's one of those things that you get in cladistics when you're trying to differentiate between, say, a crocodile and a non-crocodile, or a bird or a non-bird. But yeah, I would honestly say I know why this question was asked. It's because they wanted me to talk about Prestosaucus. Have you guys heard of Prestosaucus?
No, I have not. You are our expert.
Okay. They call them, sometimes they call these animals the Roricians, and sometimes they call them the like I said, the non-avametatarsalia. And what they are is a group of Archosaurs. Again, Archosaurs is like the ruling reptiles. That's just what that means. And everything, like from dinosaurs, there's a ton of dinosauromorphs that are not dinosaurs, but they're related to dinosaurs. That didn't, they didn't take off. They didn't become dominant. The dinosaurs did. But there was a period of time during the early to mid-Triassic where dinosaurs were just one kind of archosaur, and they were not dominant in any field. It's not till the Jurassic that the dinosaurs really start to take off and become dominant for the long period of time that they were dominant. During the early to mid Triassic, the dinosaurs were practically, there was like none. There were no dinosaurs. The most common herbivore was in fact related to us. It was a dicynodont, and it was about the size of a cow. It didn't look didn't look like a mammal, but it was more closely related to mammals than it was to dinosaurs. It was in fact a direct ancestor of mammals. And as a result of all that, there's this huge diversity of archosaurs in the Triassic that we know quite a bit about in a scientific way, but most people don't know that they existed. And Prestosaucus, Postosaucus, other Roricians were on an evolutionary process that it's very... They were also called the Crurotarsans as well. And they're called Crurotarsans because of their ankle joints, which are distinctive and unique. When you look at this like one of these animals, you can immediately pick it out by its ankle joint. You can say, okay, this ankle looks like this, therefore it's not a dinosaur. And these things were everywhere, and they were dominant. They were the ones who were the biggest hunters in the world at the time. Prestosaucus is on a line of animal that led to, at the time, there was an animal related to Prestosaucus that was like 11 meters long, which, in case you're wondering, T-Rex is 12 meters long. And this was in the late Triassic. This thing was wandering around, and its forelimbs were shrinking, and its hind limbs were taking over, and it was balancing itself bipedally. They were headed in the exact same path that dinosaurs would later end up taking, but then they just died out, and we don't know why. We don't know why they didn't take over and dinosaurs did. This is one of the real things that we're going to have to stop talking about now, because I have spent several minutes on it. But one of the things people often mistake is they think evolution is a process with an end goal, that humans are dominant because we are most evolved, and that we were the destined end point of evolution was to take us to here, to where humans are.
Nope. But
that is not the case. Evolution is random, and it has fractal branching
and constant.
Many times in animal, there's this idea that animals we used to say words like primitive, but we don't say primitive anymore. We say basal. The reason we say basal and not primitive is because basal just means that it's earlier along this trackway than this other animal that came later that is derived from it. There's no qualitative difference. There's no, being more evolved or less evolved. Every animal is equally evolved. Every animal is evolved to its niche. Every animal is evolved to the lifestyle that led it to where it is. No animal is more evolved than another. It's just this one is ancestral to this one. And that's the thing about the non-AV metatarsalian Archosaurs. They're very successful. They dominated the land in the Triassic, and they've never gone away. Like the non-AV metatarsalians are out there right now, all over the world, and they've held on when so many others didn't. So let's hear it for the non-AV metatarsalians. Yay! But now let's actually do a different question that is possibly more related to what we do here. Since Liz had to do that one, was that Joe? You had to do that one, so this one's Liz.
Okay, Sid Marquez asks, question for Blizzard Watch. Going off Rossi's article about player housing, if your character could build a home and help to rebuild, where would it be? If it were literally anywhere in the game, I'd move to Zangarmarsh and keep helping out the Sporlings. On Azeroth, either Raven Hill or Moonbrook. I've always felt that part of the world has been badly neglected by Stormwind and needs some love. I'm playing a Blood Elf right now, and I'm just going to say, that dead scar right through the middle of Ghostlands and right along the edge of Silvermoon City, we should fix this up. We should get rid of those undead. We should clean this place up. This is home. Why do we have this big pit of undead running through the middle of it? We have the power. We can fix this.
Am I the only one who's imagining like a Marie Kondo Blood Elf who's like, do these undead spark joy? No, they don't.
No, they do not.
And they really don't. No, absolutely don't spark any joy. Not even the Forsaken like them. Cut to a Forsaken. Nah, man, they those guys are dead.
So let's go in there, plant some trees. I don't know. We can do it up.
Joe?
Honestly, I would go back to Pandaria, and it's a zone that I always loved and I felt could be reclaimed or built up better than what it was, and it would be the Dread Wastes. So I actually like that area, and I think it could be reclaimed and redone, and it could be rebuilt and actually something beautiful made there. I was going to make a joke about it having good bones, but I figured that would be too on the nose. But yeah, like I will
talk about ankles some more.
But I always loved that zone, and I thought that it was just we were only ever there for like doing stuff for the bugs, the Klaxi, and I would like to see that zone. I don't want to necessarily say completely like expunge the Klaxi, but reclaim some of the stuff that they broke down, add some like beautiful architecture to it. I think it could be really cool. So like, yeah, that would be my pick for a zone. If I could go anywhere and rebuild and have player housing, I'd do the heartbeat. Matt?
Yeah, the problem I have is I have two ideas and I don't know which one to go with. So I'll just go with the first one. Blackrock Mountain.
That's a good choice.
And honestly, I don't know that I want to change it too much. Like I kind of like that it's I've been when I play WoW, I've been playing my orc a fair amount. One of the things I've always wanted to do is like have, I don't know how to put this because I'm not saying that the orcs are the orc portrayal in World of Warcraft has always been negative, but I want to see some orcs actually start to move in the direction that Sorfang was pushing them. I want to see some orcs who are like, yeah, you know what? This is messed up. And we actually are responsible for some of our own problems. And it's time that we reclaim some things and fix some things. And I'd love to see like your orc player character, your orc character in WoW, go to like Blackrock Mountain and gather up the various orcs that live there and be like, okay, guys, you've had some really terrible leaders, like just awful leaders. You do not have to live in a volcano and balance yourself on a big platform over a pit of lava. This does not have to be your life. We can get out of here or make this place someplace where we can actually live. I feel like the Horde has a real problem with, when I say the Horde, I literally just mean the orcs. They keep picking terrible places to live.
But that's because we're hardy and we can live where we can make a life here where nobody else can.
Yeah, Durotar is a terrible place to live.
It is.
And I think that would be the other possibility. That's my backup for that would be to just settle someplace in Durotar and actually work on, how do we live here? Assuming we're not going to just try and completely change Durotar to suit us, because it's its own ecosystem. How can we live in Durotar and not mess this place up? Because that's actually been something that was there from like Warcraft 3. If you remember the Rexar campaign, it's all about the Horde trying to figure out how to live in Durotar. Like there's this whole bit where the I forget what they're called, the big thunder lizards start going nuts, and Rexar is sent to find out what the problem is, and they're going nuts because someone has dug into their water supply. And I'm like, more of that, less of let's have a war with the Alliance every 5 minutes. More of how do we actually live here? How do we adapt to this environment that we have picked, even though it is utterly terrible? And for all the decisions you've made, picking a place to live because you feel like your people have to pay penance is not a good decision. That was, I really would like to see some movement in that direction, where Durotar becomes a place where the orcs actually figure out how to live in it. But I also think I would like to see orcish characters go to places where orcs live in the world. Like I'd love to see one go back to Hammerfall and set up a dominion there. So that's what I'm thinking.
They need to move where they can grow pumpkins, right?
Yes, they do. I'm sorry, but now I want to see an orc riding on a big pumpkin, being pulled by giant hogs.
It might happen someday. Do you
remember that mount that they were going to give the Gilneans and then they didn't? That looked like a weird giant pig.
Yeah.
Going back to Cataclysm.
Yeah, and before they gave him the Running Wild.
Yeah, they were going to have this like pig mount. I remember looking at it and going, what? Why are they Hogfather now? What's going on with this? But yeah, it that's just in my head now as an orc with two of those things pulling a pumpkin for him.
Yeah, I believe that's fine.
All right, so who's up? When do you read it?
Guess it would be me. So Susie the Banshee in the Death Knight starting area was always my favorite pop culture reference in WoW because I'm a huge fan of Susie and the Banshees, and because it's such a good fit. What is your favorite pop culture reference in WoW, if you have one, and why is it your favorite? And this is from Irisha. I don't know. I kind of just like pop culture references in gaming in general. I think that they are they can be very well done and are really neat time capsules when you can kind of pinpoint when they were made. Like we could talk about Mr. T as the Night Elf Mohawk, and how his NPC does exist in the game. There's little fun things like that have always happened inside of like just gaming in general. I don't know if I have an absolute 100% favorite one. I just kind of like them all. Do you guys have one that you like really sticks out to you, Liz?
When I first read this question, the first thing I thought about was Ted and Marius in Battle for Azeroth, and you just kind of find these two random guys kind of in different locations in Battle for Azeroth, and if you complete all of their little tasks, the achievement is Ted and Marius's Excellent Adventure, a reference to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I think that sticks out because it's such a little thing. It's not part of the, it's not an essential part of the game. You could play the game and entirely miss these guys.
Oh, yeah.
But it's little and it's fun, and kind of the randomness of it kind of captures the fun that was Bill and Ted in the first place.
There's also one thing I think is really interesting about WoW, before Matt's probably making his decision. Pop culture references aren't just NPCs or things like that, too. There's some that are actually like quests.
Okay, you need to stop because I've got one that is very much like what you're talking about that I'm going to talk about.
Okay, I was also going to say and fight mechanics. Please go.
Yeah. There's this reference goes back to the very dawn of World of Warcraft. It is a vanilla thing, and it's in the Badlands. In the Badlands, when you're just wandering around, there's no reason to go to this area. There's nothing there. There's no quest doesn't send you there. Story element doesn't send you there. It's just a place in the Badlands. There's a crypt underground, and in that crypt underground is a giant skeleton on a throne holding a sword, and it is a shot-by-shot recreation of the scene in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movie where he falls into a crypt out in the middle of nowhere and finds a skeleton with a sword, and he takes the sword so that he can kill the wolves that are chasing him and not die. And that's it. And there's no achievement because they didn't have achievements yet. There's no reason to be there. There's no quest that ever sends you there. It's just there. And I remember when I found it and I thought, and it was bugging me and I couldn't figure out why it was there. What is this for? Why is this here? And then it hit me. Oh, it's because of this. And I like that because it's like what Liz was talking about with Ted and Marius. It's easily missed, and there's really absolutely no reason you would find this. And that's why it's my favorite, because I remember finding it and I remember that feeling. The Sully Baloo letter is my number 2. because that's a reference to something that the developers saw on Ken Burns' Civil War documentary.
Yep.
A man named Sullivan Ballou actually wrote letters back to his wife, and they referenced that. Those are my two, because they are small, they are intimate, and they don't have anything to do with the game.
There's another one that you reminded me of while you're talking about that. Over in Carver's Harbor, there's a wrecked ship, and it has a sign on it that is a reference to Battlestar Galactica. I think it says, like, "Here lays the Lady Thrace. May she hear nothing but the rain." So, like, it's a reference to Kara Thrace in the remake of Battlestar Galactica, which I thought, like, they're little tiny things like that are really interesting. There's also, like, tons of Simpsons references, like steamed clams. Get it? Steamed hams. There's a whole bunch of, like, fun stuff that they do throughout. But, like, they have references to comics, movies. They have other gaming references in there. Literature, like, and I like the little ones too.
There's a Halo game. It might not be Halo, it might be some other shooter game, but I just remember when I found it. But one of those games, actually, you find in a frozen cave, you find a sword, and the sword is Frostmourne.
Yep.
And I remember, like, seeing that and going, "What?" So yeah, that sometimes it's not even about World of Warcraft. It's a reference in a completely different game to, like, Warcraft that I find amusing.
That was Destiny 2, and then Warcraft made a reference to the Loot Cave from Destiny 2.
Ah, okay.
There was, like, a cross-pollination there.
One thing I'm seeing in all of our examples here is they kind of epitomize the joy of exploring. They're unnecessary things that you just kind of wander into. And I think we've lost some of that joy over the years, kind of just by necessity, by the way gaming works these days. By the way, everything is data mined, and we all look stuff up on Wowhead. It's like, okay, I can't find this thing. I'm just going to look. I'm going to Google it. And the world has become so much of an open book. There's less mystery. And it's like, these days, I think we're all pretty aware, you know, if I need to be there, the game's going to send me there. And there are less of these little hidden weird things. They're all going to be somewhere where we need to be.
Or if they're there, they're, like, gamified.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, as cool as it was to have the secret finding, mount chasing stuff that was going on, at the same time, it also meant that there was no just secret stuff that was just there to be secret stuff. It was all part of this effort to get this mount.
And I enjoy the secret finding stuff too. I think that's lots of fun to watch. But it feels like Warcraft doesn't have this kind of joy of just wandering around and, oh, I found this cool thing that not everyone knows about, because if there's a cool thing, everyone already knows about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Although, on that same vein, like, I remember, and I just typed this in chat, but I remember, like, accidentally stumbling upon the Angry Chickens in Stormsong Valley. And, like, it's very clearly a reference to, like, the Angry Cuckoos from Legend of Zelda, because if you attack one, they all swarm and attack you. And so, like, I remember discovering that, and, like, I didn't hear anybody talk about it, but it was, like, this moment of pure joy, because I was like, I understood the reference. I got it. It was hilarious, but I had discovered it organically. Like, I didn't go looking for it. Like, I remember one of the first videos I ever did for our website, like, when we used to do, like videos and upload them and put them in, like, headers and stuff like that for, like, little things, was when we did the creature plateau, where, like, you would randomly, it was in Mulgore, you go to the top of this mountain, there were a bunch of creatures, and if you happen to be there at exactly the right time, they would all, like, grow super big, get weapons and armor, and just murder each other. And, like, that was the first video I ever did for the website.
Wasn't that, like, in Mulgore?
Yeah, it was in Mulgore. It was in the top of a mountain in Mulgore.
Yeah, I remember that.
But, like, that was like back in those days, like, if you found it, like, I don't remember any website having posted about it until we did. But, like, it was one of those things, like, somebody from our work chat randomly found it and then, like, told us about it. And that's how we figured, like, that's how we found it, or at least how I found it. And it was just like, I miss some of those organic moments. So I think I'm with you guys. And I think Liz is absolutely right. I think it's a matter of, I like the ones that are more organically.
Okay. As cool as this discussion has been, we've got 5 minutes. You want to jump to the last question, the one that I picked up and added to the email at the end? Does one you want to read that one?
Sure. Here is a question from Stouty Poofs. For Blizzard Watch, seeing a lot of folks speculating on a light versus void X-Pack. And this would pose an opportunity to move into a faction conflict different than Horde versus Alliance. We could go into this picking a side, no matter our race, although Void Elves and Magheart Orcs kind of already made theirs. Wondered your thoughts on a future of Light versus Void gameplay. If not, what kind of split would you see as a compelling story? Got a lore question coming too, but thought this was more gameplay banter. Cheers, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all take it away with this one. I think it's an interesting idea, but I'm not the lore person here.
Well, I don't even know if this is a lore question. This is basically just a what if we had a different faction divide question from my perspective. That's how I'm looking at it.
That's kind of how I see it too, yeah.
And honestly, I think the problem is that I'm just not in a good place to judge that because I just don't want it anymore. I just don't want it. I don't want to come up with a new faction divide that keeps me from playing with different people. Like then, just because I get to pick it doesn't, I don't know. Like if the covenants made it so I couldn't group with people in other covenants, I'd be really upset with it. I would think that I think anything that divides the player base in that fashion is bad. And I honestly, when I look back on missteps and mistakes that the developers of World of Warcraft have made over the years, I think emphasizing the faction divide in Battle for Azeroth on the tail end of Legion was the biggest mistake they've ever made. And it divided and polarized, and I don't use this word casually, and I think it does sound hyperbolic, but I think it sickened the WoW player community in a way. It created this sense of opposition that it's us versus them as a team sport, and we have teams that we back, and it's always been there in WoW to a degree. Like I remember going to the Burning Crusade midnight launch and having people like screaming, obscenities at other people because they were wearing the other faction colors and what have you. That's always been there, but Battle for Azeroth really amped it up because I remember the ads. There was one ad that I remember Liz showing me. It was like a guy in a supermarket, and they're like the cashier's glaring at the person in the line because the person in the line's like an alliance and they're Horde, and it's like I don't want to have to fight you. It's not. There's one thing, PvP doesn't bother me. It's not that. It's the idea that my enemy is the other person on the other side of the keyboard. You know what I mean? It's just we're playing a game together. We don't have to play it together, but
I tend to agree.
Yeah. And so when I hear someone say, well, "What if we did this instead?" I think it would be interesting to have a Light Void expansion where they exist and they're in opposition and we interact with them. I don't want to have to pick one and then be on Team Light, because then that means my friend who picked Team Void, because I don't know, Mitch loves the Void so much, he isn't going to pick Team Light. Come on.
There's no way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to have to then be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't tank for you, Mitch. You're on Team Shadow. You know what I mean?
I'm with you, and I agree with you 100%. And Stouty Poof, I want to make sure that you're clear that we don't hate your idea. It's just I think we've collectively, and I don't want to speak for Liz, but I think we've reached a point where, like, at least Matt and I are just kind of tired of the whole idea of factions in general. It's antiquated. It was done in Warcraft 3, and we've just spent 17 years dealing with. I'd like to move on, and this is just more of the same with that. I think you can do a very interesting Light versus Void expansion that doesn't necessarily have to have a faction divide. It can be very similar to what I think Covenants did. And I think Covenants are sort of like a precursor to what I think the future should be. Let's say you want to join a re-upped Scarlet Crusade, but it's made up of everybody, from people from both quote-unquote factions that exist, but they still interact with maybe the Light's Hand or the Silverhand, excuse me, or maybe it interacts with the another sort of like Covenant-like faction, all working towards the same goal, just going about it different, so that you can still have that agency of choice and how you would approach the problem, but everybody is working towards solving the same problem instead of fighting each other, because that's the problem that you would run into with a Light versus Void expansion, where those are the factions you choose between, is you're just going to be fighting each other more. And what does that really do? You're basically saying that a person is going to choose to, side with the Void, which we've established is sort of like this force that wants to blow up the universe and like get rid of everything, or they're going to side with the light, who is questionable in its motives for what it wants to do. See Illidan Stormrage. You can do interesting expansions revolving around core concepts without necessarily focusing on a faction divide. And I think if we move away from faction divides and work more towards Covenant style choices, I think the player base as a whole would be happier, personally. I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think it would be a better way to approach that. Like, if the Void's the problem, here are these different factions and how they're dealing with it. Or maybe it's the war between the light and the Void that is the problem that we have to deal with, and we're figuring out how to deal with the aftermath. Which is also very interesting on your timing, because they just updated the faction description pages online. So if you go look at Velen, Velen's updated to talk about a coming war between light and Void. So fortuitous timing.
I totally agree with both of y'all, really. I mean, since Battle for Azeroth, I've been feeling really tired of faction conflict, but also kind of what Joe was saying. I think you could do some interesting stories here. And, you know, what if we're just the poor mortals stuck in this battle between light and void, being bounced around by these cosmic forces, finding a way to survive this, you know, something that's just much, much bigger than us and bigger than Azeroth. And
yeah, I honestly feel like if I were going to do this kind of expansion, I would want it to be the expansion where we as mortals rise up and say, "Stop using us in your stupid peeing match." We don't want to take sides between the two of you, because you're both terrible. Just go have your cosmic war somewhere else, because we're not fighting it for you. And that's just, yeah, I'm tired. But I would totally be down for a like, as Joe was talking about it, I was thinking, what if there was like a faction that wanted to use the Void but not serve it, like literally use it?
We have that already.
Yeah, and
we have Void Elves.
Yeah.
What if you could pursue that? Like, what if other people could join in on the Void Elf crusade to conquer the Void? Like, you know, we're gonna kick the Void's butt. What do you mean? No, yeah, we're gonna make them do what we want. You know, and it just, you could have different things where you could join different groups and they can have different pursuits, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive towards each other, like where you can't group with people. I hate not being able to group with people. I'm so tired of it.
Yeah, and the same thing. Like, over the last couple of weeks, I've been invited to raid with a bunch of my friends, because they're like, hey, you know, we could use some DPS, or hey, you know, are you bored? You want to join us? We need extra bodies. But they're Alliance, and my main characters are Horde, and I can't group with them, right? Like, it's I just want to play with my friends. Do I want to level a whole other character? Like, I don't know. I think the barrier needs to come down, not go back up.
The expansion that I think did this sort of best feel was Legion.
Yeah.
I mean, Legion's class halls are very similar to Shadowland Covenants, but the class halls just felt so, like, the quests felt a little deeper in the class halls, and they felt more tied to us and to our characters. Whereas Covenants, the stories feel a little shorter and a little less important, because, okay, we just met you and we decide to join your Covenant. Okay, we're going to work with you. But this is not as important to me as working with my class hall back in Legion, because this is like my class hall. This is me. This is my identity, who I am. So that just felt like a really strong narrative. And
depending on which class you were playing.
Well, yeah. And you could have conflicts between these groups, like the Death Knights trying to steal Tyrion's body, which we have still never seen a resolution to.
What? Like, we resolved that? Really... We lost. We didn't get it. That was the resolution.
But it seems like there would be, like, maybe some tiny amount of blowback for that, because that was kind of a big deal. You know, we raided
all we did was
Light
try
Hope
to steal your guy. I don't get, why are you guys always so upset about this? It was just your beloved leader who we were going to raise into an unholy mockery of life. Like, that's just what we do. Come on.
But
no big deal. No big deal.
That was one of the better, like, the priest to paladin one was good too, because but they teamed up, basically. They were like on the same side. The Death Knight one, where they just straight up break into the Light Hope and try and steal Tyrion's body. And it's like, wow, guys. Wow. That is pretty. And for an encore, they desecrated the body of a holy red dragon after breaking into the Ruby Dragon Shrine and killing a bunch of red dragons. It's like, wow. So you decided you didn't tick off enough people, so you decided dragons too, huh?
But I agree with what Liz is saying at the core.
No,
of it.
absolutely.
Like, I think Legion had deeper questing, but I think in what terms of Matt's just describing, I think the Covenants kind of do it better in we're working towards a common goal. There's especially now that we're moving into the more cooperation phase of things versus Death Knights just kind of doing what they need to do because, hey, this is what we need to do.
I think that one of the things about Covenants is that because they added it, and we actually need to wrap up fairly soon.
We do.
But one of the things about Covenants was then they added the switching thing that if they did something like it in the next expansion, you shouldn't actually have to join a Covenant or whatever the next thing is.
Yeah.
You just work with them. And that way you can go work with any of them and you can get take it back to the way it used to be in original factioning. Like when you'd go do something for the Argent
Reputation
Dawn. Yeah, it didn't lock you out of other reputations. You could pursue multiple things. Just codify it.
Unless you want to talk about Booty Bay and the whole...
I do not. I do not want to talk about Booty Bay. Yeah, I think at this point we got to wrap it up. So, Joe?
I think so too. So Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you, Joe. Again, guys, thank you so much for being here with us. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. If you have a question for the podcast, please send it to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast of Blizzard Watch so we know it's for this show, or go to our Discord server and use our patron Q and podcast questions channel or our Q questions channel if you are not a patron. Thank you guys very much for being here with us. Thank you to Joe and Liz for always being here and helping me, not talk about dinosaurs. Well, you kind of didn't quite pull off this week, but usually you do, and I appreciate. Thanks, guys. We'll be here next week.